All right. So, hey, have you ever felt like you were following God's direction, but things still don't go according to your plan? Well, if you ever felt that way, I'm going to share some things this morning that will hopefully encourage you on your journey. Welcome to Pushing 50 Seeking Purpose, a space where we can all grow in grace as we navigate this unique season of life. I'm here simply to remind you that you have wisdom that others need, experiences that matter, and a purpose that only you can fulfill. And the topic for today is stay in step or stay in step with God. I'm going to read a short passage of scripture here, and it's actually going to be coming today from Proverbs chapter 16. I'm going to read verses 1 through 3 and then verse 9, and it's going to come out of the New Living Translation. Again, that's Proverbs 16, 1 through 3, and then verse 9. And it reads like this: We can make our own plans, but the Lord gives the right answer. People may be pure in their own eyes, but the Lord examines their motives. Commit your actions to the Lord, and your plans will succeed. And then verse 9, it says, We can make plans, but the Lord determines our steps. So I just want us to remember that our life's purpose, it is a journey, and the journey is the destination. So today I just want to encourage you to stay in step with God as we are on this journey together. Today, I'm just going to share just a very briefly share just a few things for us to remember or keep in mind as we are traveling on this journey. And I'll just jump right into it. The first thing, don't get discouraged when you don't see immediate results. Trust God's timing. Trust the process, right? So it's easy for us to get discouraged when we feel like we should be at a certain point by now. We have to resist the temptation of focusing on what's missing, but instead focus on the progress that you made. And especially once you hit a certain point in life, you're in your 20s and say, hey, I'll be here and I'll have this by 40, or I'll be at this place in my career, I'll be at this place financially. And now here you are, maybe 40 plus, maybe in your 50s, 60s, or you're at this certain age, and you don't see the things that you thought that you would have. And that can be discouraging. It is easy to get discouraged, but I want to encourage us all to resist the temptation to not focus. Resist the temptation to focus on what's missing, but let's focus on the progress. Let's focus on the process. Remember that one of the messages that I did, that our purpose is a puzzle, and all of those pieces don't come together when we think. So, like I said, many times I have to check myself in this area too. I have to check my motives for things that I desire. Like it says in verse 2 where I read, sometimes we may seem pure in our own eyes, but the Lord examines our motive. That means that He takes a close look at our desires, and He sees things that we can't see. God looks at the situation as a whole. He sees the whole situation. We may even have good motives for why we want something, but God also knows who's around us. He knows what's around us. He knows what's coming ahead. So even though we may have pure motive, the Lord said, well, yeah, their motive is pure, right? But I still have to kind of, even though their motive is pure, I still have to kind of maybe delay this, or maybe not bring this right now, because the people that are around them, if I release this into their life right now, that their circle may hinder it. That circle may destroy them. Or if I give them this now, it may destroy them. Or if I release it now, they may not have it for something major that's coming down the line. And I can release it for that thing that's coming down the line. So that's what I'm saying. Trust God's timing, trust God's process. There's been many times in my life, like even like financially and things like that, I wanted to be at a certain point. And if I would have had maybe certain things that I have now, or things that I've had at a different season in life, it wouldn't have been as good. It wouldn't have worked out as well for me, because I may have spent it, or maybe my mindset would have been a little different. but we have to trust God's time. And don't get discouraged if you don't see immediate results or you feel like you're not where you're supposed to be. Trust God's timing and trust His process. The second thing is you're not a failure. You are not a failure. A failure is an event and not a person. Right? So we can follow God's direction and things still not work out the way that we think it should. Things don't always go according to our plan, right? Like it says in verse 9, we can make plans, but the Lord determines our steps. So if you're not a failure, even though an event or a project or this idea, even though it failed, you are not a failure. The failure is that event, right? And even in my own personal life, I just remember working on the idea that I knew was from God. I knew it was from God. I put in the work, poured my time, my talent, my resources, my money, just poured a lot of stuff in this project. But once it was completed, there was a little success, but it just quickly went south. And ultimately, the project failed for reasons outside of my control. And I had to distinguish between the project failing and me being the failure, right? And one of the things that God even showed me during that process, He showed me how I grew during the process. And there were some things that could never be taken away because I've seen God do some miraculous things just because I was following His steps. And like I said, in the natural may have seemed like a failure, but the way that God moved, I've seen God do through that process, the project I was working on. I've seen God do miracles with the weather. I've seen God do miracles relating to the vehicle I was driving at the time. I've seen God bring in supernatural money and provision for working on the project. And I just tapped into some gifts and talents and things that I didn't even know was inside of me. So simply by following God and staying in step. So even though that project in the natural, it seemed to fail, but God released some things. He showed me some things about Himself, and He showed me things about how much He loves me and how much He will move His hand when I move according to His word and stand in step with Him. Right. And then the last thing I'll say before we get out of here, and even a step back or what seems to be a step backwards, that can even be ordered by the Lord. Like I said, sometimes in the natural, it may look like we're losing or we're going backwards, but we have to stay committed. Verse, I think it's 3, says, when you commit your works to the Lord, your plans will succeed. Now, here's the thing. Just like that project that I was working on, in the natural, it looked like a failure. But in God's eyes, it was a success. Why? Because in the spirit realm, when we look in the spirit realm, obedience is what equals success. So when you are moving in step, when you're staying in step with God, moving according to His will, His plans, His purposes, and His pursuits, that is success. That is successful. So in the natural, it seemed like a step back, but everything there, it was ordered by the Lord. In other words, our plans can be successful even though the outcomes are not what we plan. We can't control the outcome, but we can control our decision to stay in step with God, to stay in step with His word, and to stay in tune with His spirit. So again, today's topic is staying in step with God. Just a brief overview, reminder. 1, don't get discouraged when you don't see the immediate results. Trust God's timing. Trust the process. Remember, you are not a failure, and a failure is an event and not a person. And number 3, even a step back can be ordered by the Lord. So, hey, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. If anything in this message today resonated with you, I would just love to hear from you. Leave a comment below. Even share your story. If you have questions, comments, feedback, just pop in and say hello. But most importantly, hey, do all the social media stuff. Remember to tell a neighbor, tell a friend. Tell your auntie and mom and them that we're back again and we're still pushing. God bless.